This is the High-Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm Eric Balkman from the High-Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the Better Sports Network, and the FFPC. You can connect with me on X at Eric Balkman and the FFPC on X at FFPC. Before we get into the show, I want to remind everyone that you can get a listeners-only 10% discount to RotoViz by using the code RVRadio2025. That's RV Radio 2025. Your subscription gives you unlimited access to all of the RotoViz content and tools, and it supports the podcast channel as well. Now, without further ado, here's the latest episode of the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. Yeah, we're just having so many problems tonight. At least I am. Welcome to December, everybody. This is the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown, and hopefully it'll be December to remember for many of you who are chasing the $1 million grand prizes in both the Big Gorilla and the FFPC Main Event. This is the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown for Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025. My name is Eric Balkman, and we will bring you our guest on in just a little bit. Before we get to that, I do want to remind everybody, if you are maybe eliminated from the championship round or the consolation in the FFPC or the Big Gorilla, and you are looking for some more weekly fun, don't forget about the FFPC Weekly Challenge, which is live right now. There's no draft. There's no salary cap. Just pick 10 or 12 players if you want to play with kickers and defenses, and you can compete for up to $2,500 each and every week. Only one player per team in this competition, 10, 30, and 100 team contests. Go join now at myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Remember, the only caveat, you can only have one player per each NFL team. So if you want Daniel Jones, you can't have Jonathan Taylor. If you want Drake London, you cannot have Bijan Robinson. Myffpc.com is where to go, myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to this channel, comment on this video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live, which I will tell you about the live schedule this week coming up at the latter point of this show. I want to bring in tonight's guest, ladies and gentlemen. He is an ESPNer, works for ESPN Stats and Info, used to work the College Game Day show, the basketball show for ESPN, the fantasy show, ESPN Bet Live. And he is sitting in 18th place overall in the FFPC Main Event as he chases the $1 million grand prize. Please welcome in. You follow this guy on X at MacNova. He is the incomparable Mackenzie Kraemer. Mackenzie, welcome aboard tonight. Congratulations on your success so far. Exciting to be in the top 20 here in December, dude. Yeah,
3 main events, 3 championship game appearances, including 1 ticket punch to the sprint already. 18th place, I'll take it. Would have been a lot happier if Tucker Kraft were still healthy, because my team was looking a lot better with Tucker, but can't complain too much about 18th place. That would be nice if 20 paid instead of 10.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where you look back on these teams and you're like, God, what might have been, right? Because you need a juggernaut to win. Well, not only do you need a juggernaut to win, you need to get hot at the right time. And certainly Tucker Kraft would make this team a lot better. It's just one of those things. And I think it's a testament to your drafting and your execution of proper waiver wire management that you're still sitting top 20 right now, even with losing a significant player like that. You just got to keep grinding. You got to keep after it. And that's what you've done to replace him.
I mean, that's what you got to do. I mean, I've gotten some good waiver wire pickups throughout the year. I mean, I drafted 5 tight ends on draft day, so hopefully I'd be able to survive Tucker Kraft's injury. And Harold Fannon's been pretty good for me there. But, you mentioned you want your team to be in the best place going forward. I don't know if my team is in the best place going forward. I felt a lot more comfortable about my team a month ago. I got some tough flex decisions this week, but I also have some really high-end players and some nice combinations. So hopefully just got to run well in the right weeks, and hopefully get home a big cash.
We're going to get into that team tonight for sure. The one thing I want to bring up right away, Mackenzie, is this. If you look at the if you look at the NFL schedule for week 14, problematic because we had 4 teams on bye. Also problematic because the Monday night game is the Eagles visiting Los Angeles to take on the Chargers. Now, I'm assuming we'll get concrete-ish news on Omari and Hampton prior to that game. The problem is that news may come after lineups have locked on Sunday, after lineups, if you think about the Thursday game this week too, it's a big one where you have the Cowboys and Lions playing, and certainly you might have some flex options like Jamison Williams or trying to think of another, maybe perhaps Jake Ferguson or somebody like that, where you're weighing them against starting Omari and Hampton, right? And you don't know what's going on. Now it's also problematic for those of us, and I say us because you and I both have this guy in certain leagues, Kamani Vidal. I guess, if we get the news that Hampton is out, fire up Vidal, right? But if we don't, if it's nebulous, are you waiting on Vidal? It's such a tough decision to be making here in League Championship week for the FFPC.
Yeah, Vidal. If we're not sure about Hampton's status come Monday night, or at least by Sunday morning, Vidal's not a guy I feel too comfortable starting. I mean, the thing with the Chargers backfield, they've been running the ball a lot more this year, but the fantasy backfield still has not been that productive this season. For the season, and one big reason why is they don't throw to their running backs very much. They only got 12% of the Chargers targets go to running backs, the third lowest rate in the NFL. Their backfield only averages 17.9 points per game, the 6th fewest out of any backfield. It's spiked up a little bit more recently as their passing rate's gone down, but to me, the big thing with the Chargers backfield is you want that to be consolidated, whether that's Hampton or that's Vidal. You want to know, okay, this is the guy who's going to get 75, 80% of the touches in that backfield. And if Hampton's back, I don't think that's going to be the case for Vidal. I don't think that's going to be the case for Hampton either, because Vidal's played very well. I mean, it's kind of been an every other week thing for Vidal, where one week he spikes, next week he does nothing. But overall, I think he's been pretty good, especially since the Chargers offensive line has just been pretty miserable. So, and I think that's part of the reason they've been running it more recently, is to try to keep Herbert healthy. In my main event with him, I've been starting him, and I've been very happy to plug him in every week. But if Hampton's back, I got some tough decisions to make. I mean, I'm looking at my lineup right now. I got Xavier Worthy, I got John Mechie, I got Mason Taylor. Nobody, Luther Burden, a couple guys that I'm not super comfortable starting any of those guys. So this is going to be going down to the wire for me. But Vidal's not a guy that I'm looking to start if I have better options. But I mean, right now, my lean is if we don't have, if we think Hampton is playing and I don't hear some report that Vidal is going to monopolize that backfield, I'm probably going to look elsewhere. I mean, there are teams where I need an RB2, and in that case, I'll do it. But if I have a good receiver or a good tight end where I can get that PPR value, I think I'd rather try to go in that direction.
So Matt Zenitz, I believe I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I think it's Matt Zenitz, right? Matt Zenitz is a reporter for CBS for both NFL and college. Now, he posted this. This would have been, God, when was this? About 8 hours ago, roughly? Yeah. It's currently viewed as likely that Chargers starting running back Omari Hampton, who has missed the last 7 games with an ankle injury, will be able to return to action and play next Monday when the team faces the Eagles. Now, likely, he's going to play. How much is he going to play? I don't know. But even if he's active, I mean, if he's out there and it sounds like he's going to play maybe limited snaps, is that enough for him or for you to say, Mac, where you're like, okay, this guy is going to at least take away some from Vidal. I can't really trust Vidal if he's not on a full, snap count, like as if Hampton was not out there. Even if Hampton is only getting 15, maybe 20% of the touches, is that enough for you to say, okay, I'm out on Vidal as well?
I mean, I got to be on top of all these reports all weekend because again, this is backfield where if one guy's got the vast majority of the touches, I love it. If it's kind of split, I don't really like it. I don't like that offensive line. There are some leagues though. I have some big gorillas where my running backs are Trevion Henderson and Christian McCaffrey, and I'm basically looking at Kyle Monungai and TBD at running back. So if I have Vidal on those teams, I'd start him, and I wouldn't love it, but I mean, I'm going to be starting with some worse guys and some big gorillas this week. But but going into Monday, that's the tricky thing. But if we go into Sunday and it's like, hey, Hampton might play, he might not play, then I might be more willing to roll the dice if I don't think I have that high upside option to go against Vidal. Mm-hmm. But if I have other guys that I'm comfortable to, I'd break the tie against Vidal.
It's tough because we're doing this show on a Tuesday night where so much can change with this Hampton thing, right? And there's going to be more and more reports that come out. And the good part is you don't have to make a decision on this, for another 4 or 5 days, which is great because this is the type of thing that can change quite a bit as we move up to Monday Night Football. Now, I want to bring this up because it got some traction in the chat here. Dr. Evil posted about you drafting 5 tight ends, Mac. Sheesh, 5 tight ends. That's what I call cranking it purple. That's true. And then Bill Hollywood chiming in. I think 4 was the most I drafted this year. You have 4 on your 18th place main event team. And I was going to bring it up in front of me, and I do not have it. But I can bring it up shortly. I know Brock Wright is on that team. I want to say, is Darren Waller on that team too?
No, right now it's Mason Taylor and God, I forget the other one off the top of my head. No one good. It's not a good tight end group.
Harold Fannin, right? You got Fannin.
Fannin is the guy that I have set into that lineup, and that's honestly why I have 4 tight ends on my roster, is because I do trust Harold Fannin, but I don't really like the rest of that room that much. And with a guy like Fannin in the Browns offense, they're playing a game this week with a total of 33.5. That's a pretty low upside offense, especially with Shedeur Sanders. Now, I love Harold Fannin. I know that Dr. Evil loves Harold Fannin in the chat as well. I mean, he gets a lot of targets in that. There's in a tight end premium. He's definitely a guy I feel comfortable starting. But if I get one injury, or if something happens where in Cleveland, we find out it's going to be 50-mile-an-hour winds the next day, I want to have some backup plans at tight end, especially in FFPC where it's tight end premium. So I like to load up that spot. Now, Brock Wright is the 4th tight end. He's going to go on the waivers tomorrow night, spoiler alert, because it sounds like he's hurt for a while. But I've just been trying to pick up some tight ends that, maybe they can get some volume. If Brock Wright was getting 6-7 targets in the Lions offense, that would have been a good luck. I don't really trust Ross Dwelly with that. But I'm looking to find a backup plan, because once you get to the postseason, you get to the sprint in these FFPCs, you want to have plenty of backup plans available in case something happens where, hey, maybe Fannin gets hurt. I have somebody I trust to put in there, or maybe there's a bad weather game and I don't want to do that. So that's kind of my thought process with loading up on tight ends.
When you consider a replacement for Brock Wright, are you looking at another tight end, or would you go with like an injury away type running back?
To be honest, I haven't had that much of a chance to look at the waiver wires right now. The problem is most of the running backs and wide receivers have been pretty picked clean. There aren't that many available that are one injury away. There's one guy that I like that I might talk about later if I'm teed up on that. But for the most part, I'm probably going to be looking at really just best player available at this point. And by the way, the other tight end I have is Mike Gesicki. So, Mike is attached to a high upside offense in Joe Burrow. Maybe he can be helpful. But I mean, going back to draft day, it was really just, I drafted Kraft early, and then I just loaded up on rookies late. I got Mason Taylor, I got Harold Fannin, I got Chiga Okonkwo, who maybe could have played a bigger role with Cam Ward. And then my last pick was Noah Gray, which is mostly for the free look, but maybe Travis Kelce gets hurt in that free look, and then all of a sudden I have Patrick Mahomes #1 tight end, which a few months ago looked like it would be a good option.
Yes. I have not looked at your other teams, Mac, and I do kind of want to explore this a little bit. This specific team that you had drafted, the 18th place overall team, Gibbs and Achane, home run with your first 2 picks. You pound out 5 receivers. You wait until round 8 to take Tucker Kraft. But even with Kraft, you still draft the 4 tight ends after that. I'm curious as to how often, how frequent that you crank purple to this level. Do you have every team is different. Obviously, what you do in the first few rounds dictates what you do in the middle and late rounds. But is this something where you normally do like to load up and get 4 tight ends, 5 tight ends in this case, because FFPC is tight end premium? How normal is that for you?
I think this was the most tight ends I drafted in any team. I'll draft 3 a lot. I'll draft 4 occasionally. 5 is very rare. It's the draft capital is really what it came into here, because usually in FFPC, I like to target tight end in the first few rounds. I have a Trey McBride team that I like a lot right now that I need to win on the championship next week to advance. But here I waited for the 8th round for Tucker Kraft. And to be honest, I was setting up my team to take Patrick Mahomes in the 8th round because I had Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy on this team, but I got sniped on Mahomes, got Tucker Kraft, where I was feeling great about that for a while. But my second tight end wasn't taken until the 13th round. So I know a lot of content creators like to refer to draft capital as like auction dollars. Like the 13th round pick, the 15th, 16th, 20th round pick, those were all dollar plays where I'm perfectly fine churning through them on the waiver wire. Noah Gray was a guy that I planned on. I drafted in the 20th round, and if Kelsey didn't get hurt or Gray didn't put up a usable score, I was going to cut him. Mason Taylor, Harold Fannin, both rookies where, you see their usage early, and then if I don't like it, maybe I can cut them or maybe I hold on to them. So, and again, in the tight end premium, when you get that 1.5 receptions points per tight end reception, you can get a pretty cheap 10, 12 tight ends from points from some of these tight ends. So I'm perfectly comfortable playing tight ends in my flex. So I like having 2 or 3 good tight ends on most of my teams.
Even if you start off a draft with like Bowers, or as you said earlier with McBride, would you still draft a couple more tight ends after that? Or are you comfortable stopping with one backup after McBride or Bowers?
I don't really like to go into that in terms of like a set number of tight ends. I like to have kind of 2 that I would trust. If I have I have a Brock Bowers team where I might go a second tight end in the 7, 8, 9 range, or I might just tack on 2 at the very end. Okay. But I don't really have a set plan of like, oh, I need to go, heavy tight end. If the volumes, if the what I view as the value is there in the draft, I'll go there. If not, I'll wait and draft some of those upside tight ends late.
I feel like on this show, and really all the shows that I've been doing, I brought up Luther Burden quite a bit over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm going to keep that streak going tonight. On Black Friday, the Bears upset the Eagles, and in that game, Luther Burden saw 6 targets. He catches 4 of them for 33 yards. They also gave him a carry of which he picked up 3 yards on. And while that doesn't sound very impressive, 4 for 33, that was the most receptions of any Chicago Bear against the Eagles that day. There was some wind issues going on in that game, and obviously Caleb Williams wasn't dead on accurate with every single one of his throws, but we're seeing the volume go up. And I'm wondering, maybe not necessarily here against Green Bay in week 14, but I'm wondering the likelihood of you seeing a Burden breakout, right? When the championship round sprint starts in week 15 and goes on for the 2 weeks after that as well. Are we going to see a Burden spike in production? I'm not going to say, hey, he's $1 million league winner. I'm not going to go that far. But how significant of an impact is he going to have in this final month of the season, Mac?
It's tricky to say because his per route stats are phenomenal. 26% targets per route run. He's been producing when he gets on the field. The problem is he doesn't get on the field as much as you'd like. Now, over his last 3 games, he's upped his route rate over 50% of the time in each of those games. And the other thing you like to see is that Ben Johnson's in the media talking about how the passing game hasn't been up to their standard this season. So you would think that the rookie tight end they drafted in the first round and the rookie wide receiver they drafted early in the second round, that those would be the guys that maybe they think, hey, maybe we play those guys a little bit more late in the year, especially considering how efficient Burden has been. The problem is in a format like the FFPC is that it's hard to predict when that 55% route rate will turn into a 75% route rate, if that even happens this year. So it's just hard to pick him in a start-sit role, but he's a guy that if you 7 days from now, I could tell you that he's a guy that I'd love to start in every week in every league I'm in. Or he could just keep playing around the same amount of time, and then he's a receiver 4, a receiver 5, maybe a low end 3, and a guy that I don't really want to start, but maybe he can get a spike, or maybe this is the week for him. But typically in fantasy football, this is when rookies want to break out. Is at the end of the year. He's it's 14 games in his career right now, so hopefully this is the week for Burden, because I have a lot of Luther Burden and I'd like to be able to start him in some of these leagues, but I can't quite pull the trigger on him yet. But if you tell me in a week or 2 that he's one of the guys that you absolutely want and need to have in the sprint, I really wouldn't be that surprised.
And Steve Yergalos already telling me, Balkis, that there's a non-zero chance that he could break out. Yes, there is a non-zero chance of that, which I believe, Mac, I stole that from ESPN legend Nate Ravitz, who would use the term non-zero chance all the time. And I'm like, God, what a beautiful phrase that is. So I'm going to start using it. This is the first time I'm giving proper attribution to that. Nate Ravitz watches this show every week. So Nate, you're welcome, or you're welcome for the attribution. I'm just kidding. He's not watching. Okay. Moving on. Before we move on, I'm going to say this about Luther Burden. I think he's one of these guys that you keep on your roster. And if you are down, in the sprint, but within striking distance, week 17 for the $1 million, and you need like an upside guy, they're at San Francisco that week, and the 49ers defense seemingly is just hemorrhaging injuries. So I could see in a scenario where that's the type of guy you want to deploy, and that'll be your, pardon the term, Hail Mary to try to get to the top of the leaderboard in the main event or the Big Gorilla. But unless I see, I'm with you, Mac, unless I see something here tangible that this guy is getting double-digit targets, that he's more of a focal point, if not the focal point in the Bears passing game, he's a guy you keep on your bench as long as Moore is healthy, as long as Loveland's healthy, as long as Odunze's healthy. I think that's it. You want to have him in the holster just in case, but not a guy that you want to deploy until we see something first.
But that's a great point about the game theory, because he's not going to be started very well. And when he breaks out, it could be in a big way. And not many people are going to start that. So if you need a high upside swing that actually has a realistic chance of hitting, that's not a bad option, especially since he's going to be so low started, most likely.
Steve G also posting, how about this, Mac? The $1 million winning lineup could have Michael Wilson, Adonai Mitchell, and Devon Vele I mean, listen, that's probably not going to happen, but my God, if it did, fantasy would explode. That'd be tremendous to see. I know Mac would not want to see that because he does not have all three of those players on his 18th place team. Okay, moving forward, Xavier Worthy is a player that I went back and forth on during drafting season. I get him in this draft and I kind of ignore him for a couple of drafts. Then I'd pick him up again. And by and large, I haven't really been too thrilled with what I've got out of him this season. Obviously, he had the shoulder thing earlier this year as well. Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice went to another level on Thursday. So he's battling for targets with both those guys. And Hollywood Brown also caught a touchdown from Patrick Mahomes in that game as well. I noticed you have him on this team that's in the top 20, Mac, and he could be a pivot from Kamani Vidal if you decide not to go with Vidal if it looks like Hampton's going to play. And I'm wondering, with all the other options you have on that team, and I think this is how I'll lay it out to you as far as everybody watching this for tangible advice. I wonder if we're not better off just breaking ties against Xavier Worthy right now, unless you're presented a situation where you do need a lot of points week 17. You just hope that Worthy has a big week. I just think that there's just so much trust with Kelce and Rice and everything going with those guys right now. It's tough to put Worthy in a starting lineup.
Man, that's my biggest regret about my main event team is I came down to Devontae Adams versus Xavier Worthy, and I went with Worthy. I guess I watched too much Davis Maddock, though. Shout out Davis. But he's not a guy that I want to start or I feel comfortable starting. There are a couple decent things with him. He does get nearly 7 targets per game over his last 5 games, still running a lot of routes, getting 77% of routes, still getting a couple touches in the running game. The biggest problem with Worthy is that he gets no red zone usage whatsoever, especially since Rashee Rice came back. Since Rice came back, Rice has 17 of the 35 red zone targets. Worthy only has 3. Now, the volume gives him an okay floor. I still kind of believe in the talent, but not nearly as much as I used to. I mean, the shoulder injury also threw a wrench into that too. It's 20 years. At the bottom line, he's 22 years old with blazing speed with Patrick Mahomes, and he's a former first-round pick. So I want to give him a pretty extended chance and leave the light on for him, but he's probably a low-end receiver 3 or a high-end receiver 4 right now. And if that's what I need, and in that main event, that very well might be what I need, because I don't really trust Kamani Vidal right now either.
Right.
But he's a consideration to start, but he's not a guy I feel comfortable starting, and I'm hoping that I have better options. And John Mechie might even be the guy I'm leaning towards starting right now, but again, it's Tuesday night, so a lot can change between now and then.
Worthy has not gotten more than 6 catches any game this season, and that's 6-catch game came week 5. He's had 1 5-catch game since then. And I'm wondering, too, as I think about next year, if Kelce does hang it up, certainly Worthy would eat into the, he'd get more of a target volume in that offense. However, I just feel like he is such a complimentary player to Rice and Kelce now. I'm wondering why it's not happening. Now, Hollywood Brown could have something to do with that as well. But, I just feel like at this point, he is more of a threat than an actual fantasy asset. He helps open things up for Kelce and Rashee Rice underneath. But that doesn't help us in fantasy. And I think that's the problem I'm having with Worthy. It's like, he's running wind sprints at this point, and it's tough to live in fantasy like that.
He had 61 yards last week, and that's the most he's had since September 28th. So, I mean, that's not what you want. And he doesn't score touchdowns. So that's a pretty bad combination right there. But again, once you get past the top 25, 30 receivers, there's a lot of question marks at that point. So, but Worthy definitely has a lot of questions, probably more questions than most.
Emeka Egbuka started off the season like gangbusters. Tremendous start to his rookie year. Then dealt with some injuries. I know in the questions I sent to you, I said he's kind of hit a wall. I don't know if that's accurate, but his fantasy production definitely has not been anywhere close to where it was the first month and a half of the season. We heard Mike Evans is getting closer to coming back. Baker Mayfield is playing through a shoulder injury right now. And you also have Cade Otton, stealing some targets there as well. What do you think Egbuka's fantasy prospects are the rest of the way for sure? And then specifically, if we look towards this weekend, pretty juicy matchup on paper, at least, hosting the New Orleans Saints. But the total on that's 42.5, and the Buccaneers are 8.5-point favorites. To me, this is Bucky Irving. This is Rachaad White. This is Sean Tucker. I don't know if it's going to be an Egbuka game, but your thoughts on him week 14 and the rest of the way, Mac?
I mean, he's still a guy that I think is an every week starter for you. And I mean, there's not that many receivers I'd rather start than Emeka Egbuka. He's probably top 20, maybe even top 15, because even during his recent slump, he's tied for 7th in the NFL in targets, averaging 9 per game. I mean, you look at his last few games, 12 targets, 9, 13, 9, 8, 8. Now, the production hasn't been there, but the volume is there. He's also getting a lot of air yards. He's 17th in air yards in that span. He's getting usage in the red zone and the end zone. He's got 6 end zone targets during that span. From a usage perspective, everything you want is there. And yeah, the Saints matchup, they're probably going to take the lead and run it a little bit late. But I still look at Egbuka and I see Saints, Falcons, Panthers, Dolphins. None of those defenses really scare me. I'm not taking Egbuka out of any of my lineups unless I have a complete super team, and I don't really have any more super teams available wide receivers. So Egbuka is a guy that I'm starting every single week, and yeah, he might have another 8 for 32 or another 3 for 32 or some other bust game, but I think that he could also break out at any moment, and we've seen him have some huge spike weeks this year, and I think he's very capable of doing that at any game the rest of the year.
Can't remember if it was Joe Pisapia or Chris Welsh from Fantasy Pros. They talked about these, not about Egbuka in this sense, but they talked about, I think it was Lamar Jackson, where he's a Titanic player, where you're playing the violin, you're on the deck, the ship's going down, but you don't care. Justin Jefferson was also a Titanic player, and I don't think Egbuka is a Titanic player at this point, but I do think it's really difficult to sit him. He's had 2 games this year where he saw fewer than 7 targets. So again, you said the volume is there. And I if there's one thing that I trust more than anything else in fantasy, it's volume. It's definitely not touchdowns. It's not yards. It's like, if you are getting the targets, if you are getting the looks, especially the first read looks, I'm going to put my faith in that. And I'd be putting my faith in Emeka Egbuka as well, given all the action that he's seeing, not only across the field, but in the end zone, to your point as well, Mac. I think that's very interesting. Now, Justin Jefferson. Oh, God. So Vikings players in general right now, I think we were excited at the start of the season. We were excited about what these guys could do with J.J. McCarthy, and McCarthy showing us, and I'm not willing to say he's a bust or I'm done with McCarthy. I am willing to say it's not going to happen for him in 2025, but I'm still giving him a fair shot in 2026. But guys like Jefferson, Addison, and maybe Jefferson's on a different level than the rest of these guys, like, Addison, Hawkinson, Jones, what have you. What are you doing with these Vikings players right now, knowing that the Vikings answers at quarterback are more questions in J.J. McCarthy and Max Brosner? This is really, really bad for the Vikings, and it's also really bad for Vikings fantasy owners as well.
Yeah, I can't say I'm doing much with the Vikings just because all the teams I have with Vikings are already out. Right. But no. I mean, J.J. McCarthy was a guy that I had a lot of faith in fantasy coming into the year, just because Kevin O'Connell has shown that he can get fantasy production out of so many different quarterbacks. And this is the guy he handpicked to be his quarterback. He showed some mobility in college, and he's got, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Jalen Naylor's an okay receiver 3. Like they had, like, this was a perfect situation for a young quarterback to be in, and I wanted to bet on that. Unfortunately, a lot of my teams with JJ McCarthy are not doing so hot right now. But Jefferson's a guy, his usage is still too good for me to take him out of the lineup, and he's still Justin Jefferson. Even Jordan Addison's usage is pretty good. I mean, when the Vikings get into the red zone, they use him a lot. He's still tied for 10th in the NFL in red zone targets this year. The problem is the Vikings don't get in the red zone anymore. So I don't feel comfortable starting Jordan Addison, but I mean, I'd take him over Xavier Worthy right now, and that's pretty tough to say with given how bad the Vikings quarterback play has been recently. Jefferson's just too good to take him out of my lineup unless I'm really, really deep. I had some weeks earlier in the year where Brian Thomas, I had a similar debate with Brian Thomas, and I actually had enough depth on those teams to bench Brian Thomas. But Justin Jefferson, I just think he's at a different level. I mean, at his best, he's still maybe the best wide receiver in the NFL, and he's still got very good usage. I don't think too many teams that have Justin Jefferson are still alive. I mean, most of my Jefferson teams have long been eliminated, but if I have him, I'm still playing him.
You know, what's crazy about this is Addison in 3 out of the last 4 weeks, he has seen at least 7 targets. He saw, and I would not have believed this. And I was not watching this Vikings-Seahawks game all that closely because it wasn't a great game. He saw 10 targets against Seattle. So Brosmer threw to him 10 times. Now he only had caught 5 of those for 36 yards. But again, like he was getting the targets. He was in, and they get Washington this week. It's a much better matchup than Seattle. You get Dallas the week after that, which I know their run game, since they acquired Williams from the Jets, their run game's improved, but I think you could still attack their passing defense. The Giants after that. So there are some good matchups here coming up for Addison. I'm with you on Jefferson. I always say, Mac, I'm a weak man. When it comes to stuff like this, I don't have the chutzpah to bench a guy like Justin Jefferson, even if I think like it is the right call, even if I have that gut feeling. I cannot do it. I think you are tempting fate and angering the fantasy gods by that. And that's not for me.
And like you mentioned with Burden earlier, if you have Justin Jefferson and you somehow do make it to that sprint, he's going to be extremely low owned. So you just got to play him, and you got to hope you get that spike week.
Yeah, and if you do, my goodness, you should be shooting up leaderboards because there's not, to your point, not a lot of Jefferson out there in the championship round. Oronde Gadsden was a player that started off, I mean, he really didn't do anything at the start of the season. And then he had a semi coming out party in week 3. It really started week 6, right? 7 for 68, 7 for 164, 5 for 77, 5 for 68. But you look at his last 3 games, especially this last one against Las Vegas. 3 for 13 against Pittsburgh, 2 for 41 against Jacksonville, 1 for 27 on just 2 targets against Las Vegas. The schedule upcoming: Philadelphia, not great. Kansas City, kind of not great. And then Dallas, yeah, okay, we can deal with that. But then he gets Houston in week 17. What do you think happened to him? The Chargers coming off the bye, I would have thought that it'd be all systems go here. Certainly the Herbert injury probably played a little bit of a role into that. And I don't know how significant it was. But for Gadsden only to get 2 targets, you got to be feeling a little skittish if you have Gadsden and you're looking at flexing him out in the main event or the Big Gorilla this week against Philly.
You can make some excuses for Gadsden's recent production. The week 10 matchup against Pittsburgh, he left that game a little bit early with an injury. So you could say that was part of the reason why he didn't produce that well. Maybe the next week he was still recovering from that injury, wasn't 100%. So you can make some excuses that way. And even last week, the Chargers only threw the ball 21 times. Now, he only had, I believe, 2 targets in that game. So that's not really the target share you're looking for. But when the volume is that low, it's hard to really draw that many conclusions with it. The tricky thing with the Chargers, and I kind of mentioned this earlier with Vidal, is that their passing rate has plummeted recently. Through week 7, they had the 2nd highest design pass rate in the NFL, and it's 6th lowest since. And again, they only had 21 passes last week. The other thing with the Chargers is that I think their offensive line has suffered so many bad injuries that that's part of the reason they've been running the ball more, to try to keep that pressure off of Justin Herbert, keep the pass rush off of him, to try to keep him healthy. And as we saw last week, that he might not be fully healthy right now, given that hand surgery. So I think that's part of why they've relied a little bit more on the run. But I think Gadsden, outside of the super elite tight ends, he's still got one of the highest weekly upsides. Like, he still gets targeted down the field. Like, it could be any one of those Chargers pass catchers in a given week. Now, the problem is when the volume is a lot lower, it's probably only going to be one of them or one and a half of them instead of, hey, early in the year, you might get a Quentin Johnson spike and a Lad McConkey or a Keenan Allen or a Gadsden spike. Now you might only be getting one of them, but I still think he's probably a top 10 to 15 tight end weekly. So it's hard to bench that guy, especially in FFPC where you could play them in the flex and you get the extra half point per reception.
I think Herbert plays this week. I'm going to get to him in a second. If Trey Lance is out there instead of Herbert, then Gadsden would be a sit for you in that case.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, Trey Lance, their designed run rate has already been so low, and if you throw in a guy who can't really throw that well in Trey Lance, and it's probably going to be even lower next week. So I think, I mean, again, all of these questions are contingent on who else you have. Yeah. But if I have another option that I'm close to, and Trey Lance is a starter, I would break the tie against Gadsden. But again, like we talked about with the Vidal and Hampton, we might not know that on Sunday morning.
You know, that's the other thing too, is like with Hampton coming back, maybe we do see more of a commitment to the ground game. I know it's hard to do that. It's nice to say that you want to do that in theory, but running behind such a battered offensive line, you may not have that opportunity to. Regarding Justin Herbert, he underwent surgery on his non-throwing hand. This would have been yesterday. I believe it was yesterday. And Herbert said on Sunday he does plan on playing. And it sounds like pain tolerance is going to be a big thing for Herbert. I don't worry about pain tolerance with Justin Herbert. That guy has gutted out some nasty stuff over the years, and there's no way an injury to his non-throwing hand is going to keep him out. However, if that is the case, Mac, are we concerned about the level of production we would get from Herbert with this, recovering from surgery in his non-throwing hand? How significant of that? How significant is that in regards to Chargers pass catchers if Herbert's out there with his throwing hand good, his other hand maybe not so good?
Yeah, it's hard to really tell. I mean, as you've mentioned before, Justin Herbert's played through a lot of significant injuries in his career. There have been some weeks where I know the betting market has basically planned on Herbert not playing, and then all of a sudden you get to Saturday afternoon and you find out, he's actually going to play and he's not going to miss a beat. And though if he's hurt, I don't think that he's going to be quite as productive as normal. But is it really going to affect my projection of Gadsden that much? Probably not. If he's on the field, I kind of trust the pass catchers and I kind of trust Justin Herbert, but it's not a guy that I'm loving to start, especially given the passing volumes kind of fallen off in recent weeks. But to me, if Herbert's on the field, I feel a lot more comfortable starting Gadsden no matter what.
The other quarterback here who, I don't know, you tell me about the passing volume in the Ravens offense. I've just been so disappointed in general with pretty much everybody there. And I think it starts and ends with Lamar Jackson. Despite what did John Harbaugh say this week? Something like somebody asked him after that Ravens game, after that Thanksgiving game that they dropped to Cincinnati, and they asked him, is Lamar Jackson healthy right now? And Harbaugh, and I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, but I think he basically said something to the effect of, yes, Lamar Jackson is healthy enough to play right now. So it's not like
not great.
And I think we can see that. I mean, like his running attempts are way down, his rushing yards are way down. He has not thrown. The amount of passing touchdowns he's had in like the last 4 or 5 weeks has got to be some of the lowest. It's got to be the lowest stretch of his career. Hard
to beat zero.
Yeah, it is hard to beat zero. I think that when you consider that Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers probably did not give you what you were looking for this year, but it's not like they were drafted super high either. And maybe this trickles down to Derrick Henry. Maybe it doesn't. But your faith in Ravens pass catchers right now, going into league championship week, going into the sprint, seeing what Jackson is doing, or more accurately, what he's not doing. This is really tough to check the box for guys like Flowers, Andrews right now.
Yeah, Flowers is always a guy who projects pretty well, and he's usually pretty efficient when he gets the ball. But as we saw last week, I mean, he had in one of my home leagues, he had negative points for me in a must-win game, so I wasn't very happy with that. Though he did have a touchdown overturned by kind of an iffy penalty. So if that goes his way, then all of a sudden you're looking at not a great fantasy performance, but definitely a respectable one. But with Flowers, like he still has a 26% targets per route run. I get that's a low volume offense, but I still believe in Flowers' talent. When he gets the ball in his hand, he's still as explosive as any receiver in the NFL. And he's gotten double-digit fantasy points in 8 of his last 9 games. So the floor until last week was still okay, even though he hasn't shown a ceiling at all since week 1. Yeah. I still would be relatively okay starting Flowers because, again, once you get past the top 10, 15 receivers, top 20 receivers, it thins out very quickly. And Flowers will be one of my preferred targets outside of that. And again, he's a guy you drafted in the 5th, 6th round, maybe the 7th round. And at that point, he's probably one of your best options. Now, when you get to the tight ends, though, that's kind of where I want to go away on the Ravens offense. I've never really been that interested in Mark Andrews. I don't think FFPC is a great format for him because he's always been a guy who's been very touchdown reliant. And on FFPC, you're looking more for the guys who get a lot of volume and catches. So in half-point PPR, I think he's startable, but not so much in FFPC. He's averaging about 6 yards per 6 air yards per target, very low ADOT, very low passing offense. And the other thing, too, is Isaiah Likely's been playing a bigger role recently. He's cutting into his role. So I don't really think that Andrews is a guy that you want to start. I don't even know if he's a top 20 tight end for me this week, and Likely's probably around the same thing. Like, if you're desperate, you can and hope for that touchdown. But as we just mentioned, Jackson hasn't thrown a touchdown pass in 3 straight weeks, so I don't know if that's really coming. So I'd be okay starting Zay Flowers. The other ones, I'd probably try to look elsewhere.
You know, the Likely thing may have been a blessing in disguise, right? Because if you were on the fence with Andrews, and then you see what Likely did in week 13, maybe that's enough for you to say, okay, well, I'm not playing Andrews this week. I mean, I can't after what Likely did. And then you look at your other options there. Whereas if Likely would add a quiet game, then you're kind of like, well, okay, maybe there is still something there with Andrews. You're right. I mean, like, I think you trust Zay Flowers a little bit more than I do. But I will say the part I definitely agree with you on, given where you drafted him, really tough to find better options at wide receiver on your team. So I think you're probably going to have to be forced to start him everywhere, and that may pay off as well. The Bears, getting back to the Bears, in this game against Philly, which was, I mean, I still can't. It's really difficult for me to believe they went into Philadelphia and beat this team by darn near double-digit points. Kyle Monangai, 22 carries, 130 yards. DeAndre Swift, 18 carries, 125 yards. Monangai was targeted and did not catch anything. Swift did catch one of his 2 targets. So very, very close as far as the usage goes. Very, very close as far as the yards per touch goes in this game. Swift maybe a little bit higher. And I don't know too many teams that would have both Swift and Monangai on it. So you probably don't have to make this choice. But in a vacuum, Mac, when you're looking at these 2 Bears running backs, if you had your druthers, who do you think the better start in week 14 is going to be in Lambeau Field against the Packers? Is it Swift or is it Monangai?
And like you said, the volume is so pretty close between both of those guys where it's really hard to split some hairs. It's kind of just Monangai gets a little bit more red zone usage. Swift gets a little bit more usage in the passing game. So I would tend to think that in a game where they're about 6.5-point underdogs, last I checked, that I would probably lean towards Swift if I had both of them. I think they're both startable. They're probably both low-end RB2s, maybe high-end RB3s, but I think both of them are relatively startable. I'll be starting Monangai in at least one playoff game this week. I drafted a bunch of him because I was kind of trying to find the backup option for Swift with Ben Johnson. Maybe that was Roshan Johnson. Maybe it was Monangai. Turned out to be Monangai. But right now, I think you're pretty comfortable having both of them. Not thrilled to start either one, but if either one's your RB2, I don't think you can complain. Really hard to split hairs between the 2. I guess water gun to my head, I would say Swift, but it's close.
I think it is. I am with you. I have these guys in one, though. I have Monangai in 2 leagues, and in one of those leagues, he will not play because my other running back options are significantly better. Humble brag. And then the other league I have him in, I probably will play him. Swift, the leagues I have him in, I'm probably flexing him out or starting him as my second running back this week. I don't feel great about the output and the production, but you know what? I didn't last week, and look what they did against the Eagles, and I could see them doing that against Green Bay as well. So yes, very, very interesting this week as far as the Bears running backs go. Okay, now I want to. You tell me how you want this set up. Should we talk about the Jets receivers, or should we talk about FFPC waiver wire this week?
Let's go waiver wire, and that can lead to the other one.
Okay. All right. So a player that, and I know this is like we talked with Brad and Bob Cruz on the show last week about this. This is such a tough thing to answer this time of year because the waiver wire is kind of picked clean. There's a lot of players that are locked. As we go into week 14, Mac, is there a player that you are targeting on the waiver wire? And then a player that, knowing that we only have a precious few weeks left in the season, a player that you're just better off cutting at this point because he's not going to help you in the sprint.
I mean, I don't think Darren Waller is available in that many leagues, but if he's still out there, he'd be a guy I would target at tight end. But my favorite waiver wire pickup, and again, like you said, it's so picked clean right now because I forget, was it week 11 where you can't pick up anybody who was cut by other teams? So a lot of these guys have been cut and you can't pick them back up. But the one guy that I want to grab a lot of is Samaje Perine. And I know it's not the sexiest name as an older running back, but he came back from injury last week, had 40% of the snaps behind Chase Brown, had 4 touches in the red zone. I'm going to be starting him in probably 2 Big Gorilla championships this week, and I'm not happy about it, but he's got a floor where in a Joe Burrow offense, the Bengals have shown they trust him as a pass blocker. And if Chase Brown gets hurt, he's probably going to monopolize that backfield and get a lot of carries. And if we're one injury away from Perine maybe being a borderline RB1, which is crazy to say out loud, but in that offense, given the role that he could have, not like Taj Brooks has done much this year, Perine is a very high upside running back target right now. And he's got an okay weekly floor. So I'm in one league where literally my running backs are Trevion Henderson, Christian McCaffrey, Kyle Monangai, and Isaiah Davis. So I literally I have 2 guys on bye. Monangai's could get 1 starting spot, and I hope my opponent isn't listening to this, but I'm going to be picking up Samaje Perine to play my RB2 spot. I think I have more fab than him, so I don't think he can stop me, but it's not one I feel comfortable starting, but in terms of upside at running back, when there's so little upside or available out there, he's probably my favorite guy to target. And if I'm looking at wide receiver, we just talked about the Jets wide receivers briefly, but A.D. Mitchell is mostly gone in leagues. I don't think you're going to have him available. But John Mechie is the other one where the Jets midway through the season, the Jets kind of overhauled their receiver crew, and because Garrett Wilson got hurt, they had brought in all these mediocre old veterans like Josh Reynolds and Tyler Johnson. They drafted Arian Smith in the 4th round, who just looks like a guy who's running cardio out there. And they got A.D. Mitchell and John Mechie in trades, and they are clearly showcasing them to try to see what they can be on this roster next year. And I think A.D. Mitchell, who got 12 targets last week, is pretty much an every week starter, at least until Garrett Wilson gets back. And John Mechie is also playing. He's playing over 90% of the snaps the last couple of weeks. He scored 2 of the last 3 weeks, nearly had another touchdown last week, but he dropped the ball. He's getting a lot of targets. In Tyrod Taylor, it's a completely different offense than what they had with Justin Fields because they can actually complete a pass right now. So I think Mechie is an okay kind of target. And like I mentioned in my main event team, I'm basically debating between Mechie, Xavier Worthy, and I believe I have Luther Burden on that team, and then Vidal. And I really could go with any 4 of those guys. But I think Mechie, and the Jets have a pretty good matchup this week against Miami. Mechie's a guy that I'm okay starting with him. I think he's got a decent floor because he's getting a lot of targets, and they're targeting him in the red zone. So I think that's a pretty consolidated passing game right now between those 2. They'll sprinkle in a little bit of Mason Taylor, but he doesn't draw that many targets. And sure, they'll throw to Breece Hall, but not as much as they should, but they still throw to him sometimes. But in terms of wide receivers, it's basically just those 2. And if I'm in a consolidated offense that's probably going to be trailing a little bit, I don't think that's a bad option to go with. And
especially considering it's Tyrod Taylor throwing to him as opposed to Justin Fields, we feel much better about that as well. I actually started John Mechie in a league last week. I'm not proud of it, but I did it and it worked out. I don't know if it's going to continue, but I feel much better about it continuing after hearing you talk about it, Mac, for sure. I want to throw some other names at you to get your gauge on how you feel about these guys off the waiver wire. Tom Smith chiming in with Isaac Tesla, who granted only had 2 targets last week. He caught both of them for 35 yards. One of them was a touchdown. And Amon-Ra St. Brown still not practicing. I'm wondering what you are thinking about starting or picking up at least, and perhaps maybe starting Isaac Tesla on Thursday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys, because it doesn't look like St. Brown is going to be starting against the Cowboys in that game.
That's a great point. I mean, I've been pretty busy at work all day today, so I haven't had that much time to dive into the waiver wires this week. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, that definitely opens up a lot of opportunity in that receiving core. I just worry about Tesla being the type of guy to draw a lot of targets. He seems like he'll play more snaps, he'll get some red zone targets, but I don't know if he's going to be a high volume guy. So he seems more like a high upside, very low floor kind of guy. Even in a great matchup against Dallas, he'll probably play more. So, but I think, Tesla he's a perfectly fine option, and he's probably got a higher ceiling than Mechie. I mean, Mechie's more likely to get you, 6 catches for 45, 50 yards and a touchdown, but Tesla could easily give you, 3 for 60 and 2. So if you don't mind the low floor, Tesla's got a pretty high ceiling option. So if I'm looking at my FFPC projections and I'm seeing that I'm projected to lose by 10 or 15 points, maybe I'm more likely to start with Tesla. If I'm projected to win or it's close, I'd probably opt for a bit of a safer option. But I could change my mind by tomorrow because I admit I've not dove that much into the Lions receiving core to replace Amon-Ra yet. I'll be doing that after this call.
Right. Yeah. There you go. Yes. One other tight end I'm going to bring up here, and I picked this guy up in one of my KFFSC leagues this past week. I'll throw him up on the screen right now. Colby Parkinson, who has gotten this past week 5 targets, 4 catches, 27 yards. The week before against Tampa, 4 for 41. He gets in the end zone. In fact, week 13 broke a streak of him scoring at least a touchdown in 3 straight games. He gets the Cardinals this week. Detroit, probably not the greatest matchup, but not the worst matchup after that. Then Seattle, and then Atlanta in week 17. What do you make of Colby Parkinson here? I know that offense, like it's all about Adams and Nakua, but certainly Parkinson getting a little bit of run with the Rams right now.
He's an okay option, but the only thing I worry about him is that even recently, like last week, he ran 47% of routes. Week before was 56%, but before that, he's been less than a third of the routes every single game all season, and he's never gotten more than 5 targets in a game. Now, when you're attached to Matthew Stafford, you can catch a touchdown pass every week. And if you look at his red zone targets, I mean, I'm just pulling up his page right now. He's gotten 2 red zone targets each of the last 2 weeks. 1 the week before that, 3, 1, 1, 1. So he's gotten a red zone target in each of his last 7 games. So if you're in a league, especially in a league that prioritizes touchdowns, then Parkinson's a pretty good option. But if in the FFPC, I'm looking for a little bit more volume than Parkinson's willing to give me. But again, if I'm pretty desperate at tight end, that's probably one of the better options you're going to have on the waiver wire.
The last name I'm going to bring up here at the running back position in what we're trying to do at this point is get these injury away type running backs on our roster. So if something happens to the starter, we're looking at picking up the backup. Now, the backup has to be a player like who has some talent of some ilk, right? And he's also got to be in a situation where the offense is good, where he can put up numbers. And that's why I bring up Malik Davis here. If Javonte Williams were to go down, I mean, what did Davis do? He had a decent game on Thanksgiving. He had like 40 some yards, got a touchdown. Jaden Blue is in like healthy scratches the last few weeks as well. Malik Davis to me is, and I think I might have picked him up in a Kentucky league or two. He's very intriguing to me at this point. Mac, what do you think about Malik Davis the rest of the way? It's just far as being rostered.
Oh, I think he absolutely should be rostered. That's a really great call on your part because to the Cowboys, again, it's kind of like the P. Ryan bet. It's not the sexiest name in the world. The former 27-year-old, former undrafted free agent's been cut by the team a few different times. He was actually on a winning best ball team I had 2 years ago, and he didn't even do anything all year. So he's been around doing nothing for a long time. But right now, it looks like he's the direct backup to Javonte Williams. And in that offense, that's a really nice role to have. He scored last week. I'm still really tilted he didn't score against the Raiders on Monday night a few weeks ago, and I live bet him anytime touchdown, and the Cowboys just decided to take a knee from the 9-yard line with 3 minutes left, but who's counting? But I think Malik Davis is a really, really nice call because, again, at the running back spot, you're kind of just looking for the one injury away guys, and most of those guys are rostered. Malik Davis, not one of them. I even picked up Phil Maffa in a few leagues a few weeks ago, thinking that he could be the guy that could beat Javonte Williams' handcuff. Doesn't look like it's going to be him. It looks like it's going to be Malik Davis. I've already picked him up in a couple of leagues, and if he's out there, he's definitely a guy I want to try to add to my bench in a few more.
maybe this last question is more of just, proper roster management now going into league championship week and then the sprint. Are you the type of guy that is willing to cut these borderline top 60 wide receivers, borderline top 25 tight ends to pick up these running backs where you're like, you know what? The only way I'd play these guys is if, 2 or 3 of my receivers get hurt or 1 or 2 of my tight ends get hurt. And in that case, I'm probably not winning it anyway. So you're willing to take chances on these running backs. What does Mackenzie Kraemer do with his rosters that are with the back end of his rosters that are in competition for the $1 million for the remaining 4 weeks of the season?
I mean, there aren't that many guys out there like Malik Davis, but he would definitely be a guy that I'd like to target. But to your point, if I have 8 receivers on my team and there's 5 of them I like and there's 2 of them I kind of like, especially if I don't think they have that much upside, like a Luther Burden, like I'm not cutting him because he could easily be, he could be the Bears receiver 1 in 2 weeks. I wouldn't be surprised. But, I cut Kayshon Boutte a couple of weeks ago in one league because I just needed the roster spot. I actually kind of regret that one because I wish I'd cut somebody else because I actually kind of like Boutte's upside a little bit more than I thought I did at the time. But he was on a week 14 bye, so I kind of broke the tie against that. But the other thing that I want to make sure in my FFPC leagues that I have going into the playoffs is I want to make sure I have a backup quarterback on all of these teams. And some of these leagues, if I'm really light at quarterback, I could even carry 3. I've been burned in the playoffs before where I go to the playoffs with even 2 quarterbacks. One gets hurt, one gets benched, and all of a sudden I'm in week 16 and I have a pretty decent team and I'm getting 0 from quarterback. My team's just dead. Even the same thing at kicker. I mean, we saw today Michael Badgley got cut by the Colts.
Yeah.
If this is week 16 and Michael Badgley's my kicker, all of a sudden I'm taking a 0 at kicker. So I'm not necessarily prioritizing backup kicker, but if I'm breaking a tie, I want to make sure that all my bases are covered. So I want to try to get 2 kickers. I want to try to get 2 or 3 quarterbacks on a lot of my teams. So it's not the sexiest thing in the world, but you want to try to have your bases covered. Yeah, it's probably not going to win you $1 million if you're starting Geno Smith or whoever else at quarterback. But if you can stash a Mariota or something, if you would have said a couple weeks ago, stashing Jacoby Brissett didn't really look like a high upside option. Now you got Jacoby Brissett and you're looking at man, should I start Jacoby Brissett or Lamar Jackson this week? And I'd still start Lamar, but it's a lot closer than I would have been a couple weeks ago. So that's kind of how I'm looking to highlight to cover the back of my rosters is make sure I have backups at key positions where I'm covered if there's an injury or a cut or something strange happening. And like you said, grab those high upside running backs. So we're kind of running out of time for some of them to hit, but if you're 1 injury away, you're 1 injury away.
And you even having 20 touches in 1 week, even if it's just 1 week in the sprint, that might be enough too, to create some variance and vault your team to the top. I just looked up because I knew I had Badgley on a few teams. The KFFSC main event sprint starts this week, and I do have Badgley on 3 rosters, but I have an extra kicker on all 3 of those rosters. So I think that's the smart thing to do. Abib Agbatoba, I think the first year he won the FPC, did it without a kicker the entire sprint to tell you how dominant his roster was. He took a 0 at kicker every single week and ended up winning the 6-figure grand prize. But I do think that's highly unlikely for that to happen again. So I'm definitely team backup kicker for the sprint. I hate taking 0s and knowing that, with how fickle these last few weeks can be. You do need to run hot. I'm fine with cutting a little bit of depth to make sure I'm not taking 0s at those spots for sure. And
I'm playing Abib in one of my main event finals, and he's only got 1 kicker, so I don't know if he's learned his lesson there.
He may not have. And I want to say, are you playing Chad Schroeder in one of the other ones?
I'm playing Abib in one. I'm playing Chad in the other, and I don't know the other one. But playing 2 heavy hitters in 2 of my 3 mains.
It's a tall task this week, but that's what makes the FFPC so enjoyable is to topple these format. Hey, Abib Agbatoba's won the FPC twice. Chad Schroeder won the original inaugural main event that we did for the FFPC in 2008. He's won a lot of other stuff since then as well. So it'll be fun matchups, good sweats for you this weekend. Hopefully you end up bringing it home. And I know their big focus is trying to get that team up from 18th all the way up to 1st by the end of the season. So Mac, I wish you nothing but the best on that. Great insight and stats from you tonight, a guy who works for ESPN Stats and Info. I would expect nothing less. And you definitely hit it out of the park, over-delivered for sure. And I know I've learned some stuff, and I guarantee you've helped out a lot of FFPC players tonight. At Mac Nova on X, is there anything else that we should be aware of that you're working on?
Mac Nova, if you want to follow me on Twitter. I don't tweet as much as I used to, but maybe I will one day again. But I write an Eliminator Challenge article for ESPN.com, so that'll be going up tomorrow. I actually got to write that as soon as I'm done with this call, so I haven't really dove into that much yet. My last Eliminator Challenge team got knocked out last week with the Rams losing to the Panthers, so it's never fun writing the article when when you have no skin in the game. But I'll be doing that tonight. But that'll be up on ESPN.com tomorrow, and I'm on behind the scenes on a lot of different shows. So. But it's always good to be on with you, Balky. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, it's always great having you, for sure. At Mac Nova, we will. I'll let you get back to the mania that is December college basketball, crazy stuff, and I'll let you get to that Eliminator article and start grinding waivers for the last week of the main event here as well. Thank you so much for joining me. Happy holidays to you and yours, and we will talk with you again soon.
And only a month and a half till these never too early best balls. I can't wait to be drafting some Superflex teams at the end of January.
Love it. Thanks, Mac. Be good.
Take it easy. Thank you.
All right, we'll see you. That is Mackenzie Kraemer, ladies and gentlemen, at Mac Nova on X, 18th overall in the FFPC main event, one of the hardest working guys out there. And you can see how he's gotten his team into the top 20. That will complete tonight's episode. I want to remind you that the FFPC Weekly Challenge is live right now. MyFFPC.com. No draft, no salary cap. Just pick 10 players or 12 players if you want to play with kickers and defenses. One player per team. So if you want Kyle Manunga, you can't have DeAndre Swift. If you want, I don't know why I always blank on this. If you want Cortland Sutton, you can't have RJ Harvey. Win up to $2,500. 10, 30, and 100 team contests. MyFFPC.com is where to go. MyFFPC.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live. Now, this coming Thursday, FFPC Insider Access is live at 7 p.m. Eastern. We'll hang out with you into the second quarter of that Thursday night game. My guest co-host this Thursday, Rotoballer's own Frank Amarante, is going to join me. First time ever having him on the show, so that's going to be a lot of fun. And then Farrell and I will go live Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Again, all these shows on the FFPC socials, YouTube, Facebook, and X. So you can check us out there. That will be the schedule for the live shows this week for League Championship Week. Good luck to all of you battling in your Big Gorilla and main event league titles, especially if you need that win to get into the championship round as well. For Mackenzie Kraemer, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. We will talk with you on Thursday for the FFPC Insider Access Show on the Better Sports Network.
Thank you for listening to the High Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. And thanks to Grapes for our theme music. Please review the podcast on Apple Podcasts under the RotoViz radio feed. It helps us find new listeners. Contact us via email at rotovizradio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think and connect with us on X at RotoVizRadio. Remember, you can always support the show by subscribing to RotoViz at a 10% discount using the code RVRadio2025. That's RVRADIO2025 through the NFL Podcast homepage at rotoviz.com/podcast.